mean to shoot at you. You just started me. That's all.
Okay. Moving on.
You don't remember your Uncle Jack?
I don't have an Uncle Jack. No.
Oh. Well, maybe you did in the old land before you came to...
New York City?
New York City. You are now listening to the Turk Raz podcast. We bring you our thoughts and reactions to what is happening in pop culture today, and we go back in time to revisit classic films of the past. Okay, well, we're here to talk about a really grimy retro roundtable. We're going all the way to the streets of
New York.
That's right. I'm super excited to be talking about this one-of-a-kind film, Martin Scorsese's American historical drama, Gangs of New York. The film was released in December 20th, 2002. Of course, that's Oscar season.
Yep.
And it grossed $193 million worldwide. It was originally set to be released in fall 2001, but it was delayed due to the September attacks.
Right.
Like I said, this is a period piece film, is inspired by loosely on Hebert Asbury's 1927 history anthology, Gangs of New York, that depicts the grit and grime of old New York, series of tales stitched together over many decades. Asbury was a journalist. He wrote about the underworld and crime in cities such as New York and Chicago. The film is a great fictional story that uses a mix of exaggerated real life and imagined characters, masterful set design and art direction, with a great sprinkle of historical anecdotes from the dirty gutters of the 19th century New York City's most famous neighborhood, the 5 Points!
Yeah, the 5 points. It's great.
When a person first watches this movie, I would say it's a little bit overwhelming.
It is. There's a lot happening.
It has great imagery, especially for its time, like 2002. I always thought 2002 was a great time for movies. Like we had this movie, we had Catch Me If You Can, Minority Report, then of course Lord of the Rings, and some Harry Potter.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a good couple of years.
Mm-hmm. The movie was also pretty acclaimed for its historical accuracy. Of course, it's a Scorsese production. It was very lavish. The set they built was in Rome, Italy. They really replicated the 5 Points to life from the historical illustrations. I felt as a viewer, I was living in the 5 Points with them.
No, it was a great set.
I can't believe actually this film is 20 years old. I remember in the lead up to the film being released, how much they spent on making of the 5 Point set. Like, I think they spent $100 million on this film, and it really feels like they got their money's worth.
They did. They created an entire world, and I thought that was beautifully done.
In a way, during the lead up, the press was almost the same as Titanic because of the huge budget. And with Titanic, because it was so over budget, they were predicting it to be like a box office failure, but we know what happened there.
Yep.
Old James is still the king of the world. This was a Martin Scorsese movie. He wasn't known for big finances back. It's more, his movies are more critical acclaimed and awards and shit.
Yep.
And prestige. Like, come on, it's Martin Scorsese, Goodfellas, Casino, Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, and etc.
Yeah.
This is a Miramax production, so...
Good old Harvey.
Oh, good old Harvey. Yeah, like you said, it was produced by Bob and Harvey Weinstein. Apparently, there was a lot of disagreements between the two Harveys and Martin Scorsese, which I think most people kind of knows the history with Harvey, especially. You can imagine their meetings. There was like lots of wine, cheese, cigarette smoking, and women while discussing this film.
Oh, yes.
Jennifer Lawrence. The soundtrack was fantastic, had eclectic stuff. Original music was composed by Howard Shore, who scored the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogy. Really good composer. And then the movie kind of had U2. Kind of makes sense because, most of the characters, the main characters, they're Irish descendants. The premise of Gangs of New York is it's an epic tale of vengeance and survival. As waves of immigrants swell the population of New York, lawlessness and corruption thrive in lower Manhattan 5 Points section. After years of incarceration, young Irish immigrant Amsterdam Valen returns, seeking revenge against the rival gang leader who killed his father. But Amsterdam's personal vendetta becomes part of the gang warfare that erupts as he in his adopted homeland.
Yeah, the plot is eerily similar to a lot of classic films, such as Conan. There's a lot of revenge, have your parents taken away from you at a young age, and then you grow up and seek revenge 20 years later, or however old you are, kind of like that, So there's a bit of Conan there. There's a bit of the Northman. If anyone's ever seen the Northman's kind of like that as well. But yeah, it's a common plot, but when you use like different settings and time, it can feel very different.
Definitely, it's kind of the old revenge tale, though it's kind of a revenge tale where he basically becomes part of the family and there's confliction within that.
Right.
As we see in the film, the Bill is not just an adversary, but he comes kind of like a surrogate father figure. Okay, before we move along on the film, Turk, what is your relationship with this film? Did you see this movie when it first came out, or was it like years after? Were you aware of it at the time, or is it kind of like...
This one I don't think I watched too long after it released in the theater. I don't think I saw it in the theater, but I'm pretty sure I saw it on DVD from the movie store. Yeah, I've always remembered this movie as being one of my favorite watches, so that's why I kind of suggested this one. And I, obviously I always assume you watched it because you've seen everything, but this one this one was good because like Scorsese is a special person, and he knows how to write fulfilling movies. And it just, there's no, like, usually when he writes a movie or directs a movie, it's done like really, really well. He doesn't, in my opinion, from what I've seen, he doesn't have too many flops.
No, everything he does is really interesting, and he takes really different movies like he did The Last Temptation of Christ. Like, he's not afraid to go outside the box, but his kind of staple is kind of a lot of his movies kind of are based in the New York area, because I believe he was born in Little Italy. So,
yep.
And he's at a time when, like, alive at the time when the characters in Goodfellas and some of these people were living. So he must have heard stuff. So it's a really interesting take. Like he's probably one of the best directors out there ever.
Yep, I agree.
It just seems kind of natural, him kind of working with Leo, because this is their first outing together. He kind of snatched Caprio from the success of Titanic. 2002 was kind of a monument year for Leo, because he kind of was on the precipice. Okay, Titanic came out, so now he's like one of the biggest actors. He's this heartthrob, and his kind of career was kind of, the trajectory could have went either way. He could have been this big kind of heart, movie action, but no, he kind of took a twist, and I think he kind of came back with a bang with Gangs of New York, and then along with Catch Me If You Can.
So Raz, what was your first experience like with this movie?
Well, Turk, my first experience was December 20th, 2002. Friends of mine, we were quite excited. We're, of course, like you said, we've seen every Scorsese movie we could get our hands on. Obviously, being fans of Goodfellas and Casino, and it being kind of a gangs movie in New York, we had to go to it. So I was pretty excited for this film. I was excited for it like the year before, because I thought it was coming out in 2001. So we went to it, and man, and the film just, it captured me. It's like there's certain movies you go to where you watch. Most movies you kind of go and kind of enjoy, or you don't, but there's some movies that, say Braveheart or Goodfellas, Godfather, something about it. It feels like it's like a game changer for your viewing, and this is like one of those for me.
Nice. Yeah.
And we went to it, and I couldn't wait to see it again. It was awesome. There was a packed theater. People were enjoying themselves. I kind of miss those days, because the theater experience is a little bit different. Most of it's at home, and then we do go, it's usually to those Fruity Cocoa Puff movies.
I think Hollywood needs a reset.
Yeah. And just like you said, with the set design, the costumes, and the art direction, and all that, it's just, it all came together.
That's one thing I really loved about this film, is just how immersive it became with all the costumes and the set design. It really made you believe that you were in 1846 New York. Like, it was just so cool.
And most importantly, the actors that they selected in this film. In this film, yes, there's Leo DiCaprio, but it's a very huge ensemble cast. One of them that probably stands out the most out of the movie is Daniel Day-Lewis as Bill the Butcher. He steals the show hands down.
Yes, he is by far the best actor in this film.
Yeah, like he's like, when you think of best actors, Daniel Day-Lewis is on like probably your top 5, at least top 10.
Yep.
It also has Cameron Diaz, who I think is kind of as Jenny Everdeen, a little bit of an understated performance. I think Cameron Diaz doesn't get a lot of credit she should. I think you kind of just look to her like movies like Something About Mary and a lot of rom-coms, but I thought she was quite good in this movie.
Yeah, I was very impressed with her performance in this movie, and actually it's refreshing to see her do something completely different than like what you just said with all her rom-com library of films. This one is out of the realm of what she's normally doing, and she does a great job.
She does a really good job. And another one that almost kind of steals the show itself is Jim Broadbent as William Boss Tweed from Tammany Hall. He's fantastic. He looks like the real life Tweed, and he's got charisma, funny, corruption at all levels. I really enjoy Jim Broadbent. He's fantastic. And John C. Reilly as Happy Jack Mulrooney.
I love John C. Reilly.
You gotta love the guy, and he's not like a big player in the movie, but when he comes in and he comes out, it's kind of meaningful. And Henry Thomas, old Elliot himself, kind of makes an appearance as Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of something like this movie kind of mirrors a little bit like Legends of the Fall with his character that both kind of meet a sticky end. And Brendan Gleeson as Walter Monk McGinnon.
I love this guy.
I love Brendan Gleeson.
Is he related to Jackie?
Where are you, you son bitch? Where are you, you son bitch?
No.
No? Okay.
Well, he's Irish.
Well, yeah, just Gleason. You never know.
Not Jackie Gleason.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess, you know, man, I who knows?
I'm grasping.
Yeah, a little bit. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But he's great. Brendan, he was in Braveheart. He's in a range of good films. A movie I really recommend is awesome is In Bruges with him and Colin Farrell. It's a must-see movie. Last but not least, Qui-Gon himself, Liam Neeson as Priest Valen. Like, he's not in the movie that much, but he makes a huge impact. And actually, technically, his character impacts really the whole movie, the plot.
It does.
So a great cast. And I mean, there's many more other characters out there, but and actors and actresses in this, but these are some of the main players that kind of stand out. Most people would probably recognize. The others, I don't think you would.
Yeah.
The opening of 15 minutes of the film is technically actually the big gang warfare there is inspired by the infamous battle between the Dead Rabbits versus the Bowery Boys. The battle happened in 1857. The movie battle takes place in 1846. That was done apparently for the movie to get Mr. Amsterdam Valen in time for the draft riots. The movie opens in the catacombs or caves in the old brewery. We see two characters. Priest Valen teaching his son Amsterdam some Irish tradition. Priest wasn't a priest. It is his nickname given to him due to the strong devotion to Catholicism. And we see the shaving and cutting of the side of the cheek. I didn't understand what does that symbolize? Did you do any?
I didn't
wasn't
pick
sure
up
the
on
symbolism
that.
there. Like it's like almost like, you know, like a pound of flesh, or like I know he was teaching him about that the blood stays on the blade. And we learn that they're the Dead Rabbits, so we get this great detailed shot of them walking through the underground brewery. There's so much going on. They're getting ready for battle. They're praying. You see all these people getting together. The gang is getting together. Like it's a visual feast.
Yeah, and the music in this scene, as they follow them get together and they're heading towards outside, like the music just ramps up and the drums are playing heavy, and it's just this tribal, barbaric sound that gets you like pumped up like, holy shit, there's a battle coming.
Like it really does, and it has got that little flute going. I've heard some of the criticisms of the film is the music, but I actually disagree. I thought the music was well placed in this film.
Yep.
We see a lot of characters that are directly or indirectly based out of the book, The Gangs of New York. There's one interesting character in particular we see who appears throughout the film, that Hellcat Maggie.
Right, the chick with the shaved teeth.
Yeah.
That was actual person. That's right.
It was, yeah. In this time, apparently there was a lot of female battlers who took part in these fights. It is said she filed, like you said, her teeth to points, wore large artificial nails constructed from brass, like brass pipe or metal.
Yeah.
She's famous for biting or cutting people's ears off.
Yep.
And then stored them in a jar. A cookie jar in case you wanted a late night snack.
Imagine being married to her.
Oh man, yeah, you definitely have to have a fetish to be with this chick. In the movie, we see Maggie at the bar, like when we see her pull up to that bar and place that ear in the jar within formaldehyde. So.
Yep.
So the dead rabbits gather and the doors swing open. But like before that, we get our first encounter with Monk, and he's kind of like bargaining, like because he's got his big kind of stick there with the notches. As we learn, those are like all the bodies that he kills. So Priest is kind of like, all right, if you're gonna fight for me, what are you gonna give me? And they kind of come down to that, and boom, we're into it. And then once the doors open, the file on out, we get this beautiful shot of the 5 points for the first time. Just gorgeous. Did you see just outside the doors, those flocks of pigs roaming around?
I forgot about that. Yeah.
There's so much freaking eye candy in this film. It's like, you have to like stop and pause it or like watch it because it's so awesome. But I just see all these herds of pigs. There's like shit everywhere. Also, you see, most of the film takes place around this brewery, like as we see, but it does eventually become the mission. Like it changes its function. A brewery like that would be next to a pond, as you would need for a brewery, right? You need water. I bet the foundations, I'm sure the foundations back then, there would be lots of shifting for the housing, you can imagine, right?
Probably.
And like another thing about those catacombs that we see in the film, like I don't think those are historically accurate because like I don't think they dug deep caves that much there, but it's an awesome effect for the film because I think they're trying to represent that they're so overpopulated and people are digging into tunnels,
living under the ground,
underground, right? Big battle ensues, so they're meeting up against Bill the Butcher, the nativists. They were the Bowery Boys, and you can see by their language they are anti-Irish. Go back to your country. By the Native Americans, I think what they meant was they're natives who lived there for decades or born there.
Yeah, I got that too.
Yeah, we see Bill the Butcher challenges Priest, the Natives of America versus the foreign horde. It's interesting. Bill quotes the Christian Lord over the Roman popery. And I always find that interesting. Like any type, when Protestants kind of criticize, but it's different parts of the same elephant, in my opinion. And then we get this huge, massive, violent clash.
Yeah, no, and the scene it's perfect for a big battle because the ground is snow covered. Mm-hmm. So like every drop of blood's going to be magnified when that happens during the battle, and it's just the ground is like stained red after.
Yeah, and I love the scene so much because the music, like you said, we hear the anger in the guitars, and you can really feel the anxiety. Like you see Amsterdam when it starts, like he kind of gasps for air because like this shit's really going down. People are getting killed.
Yeah,
and you assume I would assume this is like his first experience with a thing such as this.
Yeah, probably.
And you also kind of view this battle through the lens of both Bill, the Butcher, and Priest. Like you cut away to some other characters, but you mainly kind of see like how they're doing, and both are just kicking ass, especially Bill. Like there's just this chaotic mess of slaughter. Note, you can also see some editing errors. I don't know if you notice as the Butcher's about to confront Valen. You see an axe chop at Priest's left arm and a bunch of blood spurts out. Then the next shot you see Priest is fine, and then Bill pushes someone in, he gets stabbed. So I don't know if that was like prior they were going to have him chop his arms off or injure him like that.
Okay.
But then they must have changed. And you can see while Bill wounds and kills the Priest that he really holds him in high regard as he allows his body not to be defiled after all this. It gets crazy. This person that you're going to kill and run out of here, it's almost like there's a familia. And then we see little Amsterdam tries to flee and he runs back into the cave and little Johnny helps. He buries the knife.
Yeah, the one thing that I really loved about the battle was just seeing all the different handmade weapons that they were coming up with. Mm-hmm. Even before going into battle, like just weapons that you've never even seen before, and you're like, oh, that's a weird way to make an axe, or that's a weird way to make a knife, or whatever. Just whatever they can get their hands on. They weren't like traditional weapons; they were like handmade, and each had its own little quirky look to it. But I thought that was great. That was one of my favorite things.
And just like the clothing they wore, the weather, like a lot of it looks like it was spray paint with like lines, and then they had like scarves and all that to kind of signify who they were. Like the Native Americans had the blue, and then we see the dead rabbit, the pelt going into battle, and you kind of see that Bill tells them. It's funny, he kind of says don't kill the Amsterdam and send him to the law so you can get a good education, but they just send him to like a reform. Is that what he meant? Because I wasn't too sure if he meant, look after this kid like something a little bit better than actually what happened to him, or was him running away and going into the cave the result? Then they sent him. Like I don't know. I didn't quite understand that.
Yeah, I feel like Bill wanted the best for the kid because he respected the priest so much that he wanted the best for his child. But yeah, and then of course Amsterdam kind of makes his own destiny by running away, and then so that's basically I think what happened, and then he gets to reform, I guess.
Yeah, they send him to Hellgate. And Bill outlaws the dead rabbits, and then we get this great camera. The pans back, and we see this beautiful image of New York City in 1946. 1846.
Or 1846.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And then we kind of fast forward 16 years later, 1862, we catch up with Amsterdam. He spent 16 years in Hellgate House Reform, Blackwell's Island. In truth, it was never called that name at any time in history when I was looking it up. But I think it just sounded, Hell's Gate.
Yeah, no, and it was cool, like, showing him come back, and he's older now, and he was being treated as one of the Irish coming off the boat, even because he was, kind of coming from the same area. And so like when all these flocks of Irish people were coming off the ships, like people were chucking shit at them, like throwing rocks at them, and, because they weren't part of, they weren't native to the land. So yeah, they were discriminated right away. Yeah, coming off the boat.
Absolutely. Like they were like almost the lower of the low out of all the immigrants, like even like where other people of ethnic were higher than the Irish at that time, because the Irish had no trades or anything. Like they were just it was pretty tough for them.
And, well, one more thing I want to say about this is there's a beautiful montage of like basically showing the journey of what an Irish person would go through coming off these ships.
Yeah.
Do you have anything on this, or?
Obviously those series of vendettas, like from the perspective like you're talking about, we see a lot of this in Scorsese films anyways. So I thought that was really well done, because I think in so little time we got a huge explanation, like, condensing the history in Leo's voiceover.
Right.
And he informs us, and I like you said, the 16 years since his father's death, like we're catching up in the second year of the Civil War at the time, and we see a lot of anti-union. We see the docks are all, the docks are just full of people, and he's even handed a pamphlet and bread, and we see was a city full of tribes.
Yeah, no,
chief, rich and poor.
Yeah, I love that. It was really awesome to see. Right away you're coming off the boat and you're going through town, and right away you're being faced with all these decisions, like quick, here young man, come sign up for the war, like right away off the boat, and you're already getting put to war. It's pretty crazy.
As we see. And we get a good cut to Tammany Hall, the political society of Democrats. Did you notice all those frickin' birds in his office? It's just loaded with birds, and then you see McGloin there, the little Irish stooge, kind of messing around with it, eh? And I think this scene does a really good job establishing Boss Tweed is trying to get the butcher on board for his political objectives. But Bill doesn't want to, because he's old school. We see Tammany sees the Irish immigrants coming into the shore as an opportunity for votes, power, and money, so he wants to work with them, where Bill just sees them as nothing more than trespassers. The trespassers. Throughout the movie, we see them go back and forth with this ideology. It's really great to see that. And we get to see these characters all connected, like everywhere, like brothels, the political party building. They're always meeting up. It was like, it's like, seeing your best friends in a way, but you're kind of like your rivals.
Yeah, I like when they're trying to describe like all the different gangs in the city, and they talk about the brothels, and I can't remember what their name was, the girls, because they actually did some shady shit too, and not just like for sex, but they would pretend to have sex, but they would actually kill people too.
And rob them, yeah.
Yeah, and rob them.
Like Cardi B.
Yeah. I like when he's going through and he's telling and he's describing all these gangs and he says that the girls, they work on their backs, but they kill with their hands. I love that.
Yeah. And before that, Amsterdam kind of, as he's running around, he goes into the old brewery to fetch his knife that he buried. And the thing is if you notice, actually, like, it is kind of a technical error. In the beginning of the film, he just buries the knife by itself in the ground, but then when he recovers, it's in a freaking box.
Of course it is. Yeah.
And then he encounters a couple of hoods, and he beats the shit out of them. And the one kind of recognizes him as Johnny.
Yeah.
You're the priest's father. Or not priest's father, but
Son.
you're the
Priest's
son.
son,
Yeah. And that's where Johnny gives an update. And we learned about Amsterdam learns that they're outlawed.
Yes.
But he must have heard through at the reform school before that.
Maybe.
I really like this moment in the movie where you see that the streets are filled with mayhem and shit all the time. We see people punching, robbing, we see prostitutes, people getting jumped, tripped. At all times in this movie, someone is either getting mugged or punched.
It's just constant rioting. It is what it is. It really is. Like every day there's a riot.
And of course, we know now that this depiction has been greatly exaggerated for those times. Like, people were really working and poor there. That was really and kind of famine, but it wasn't like as crazy as the book or this movie suggests.
Right.
But it still was hard times.
Yeah.
But this is very effective for the movie's entertainment sake.
Very.
Right? Scorsese's a master at it. We then get introduced to Jenny Everdeen, a pickpocketer woman who is always committing crimes.
I love you, Jenny.
Yeah. Well, you're a pair of conversationalists, aren't you? Maybe not, but we're deep thinkers.
That's right.
And it's a good scene because then we see that she, obviously Johnny's got huge one-itis for her. And Amsterdam notices that when she bumped into him, she stole his little trinket, his little ballerina or his little music box.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Oh, no, this is actually
a locket.
She stole the locket because they haven't went to the fire. All right.
Right.
Yeah. But that's when we get to the fire scene when the building's on fire. I love this.
This is awesome.
Yeah, because all the firefighter crews show up. And at the time, the fire departments were all run by competing gangs. They were like social clubs.
Yep.
And also, more realistically, a lot of people joined the club so their houses wouldn't get looted if they caught fire.
That's right.
You just kind of see here that they're debating and brawling and wrestling, and this building's on fire. And it's like, you can save it.
I like, because they come in like trucks head on head and or head to head, and the guys are like beating each other up with axes and shit and killing each other, and the fire's burning in the background, and they're not worried about the fire. But then you got like, they're trying to hide the hydrants, so they like put like a fake barrel over top of a hydrant, and the guy's sitting on it, do.
Yeah,
and then when their clan comes up, they're like, okay, here it is, hook up.
Yeah,
it was so good.
And things were looking bleak for Tweed until Bill the Butcher shows up and kind of evens in their favor, and he's like, but then by that point the building is pretty much gone, so he's like, they're like, there's nothing left here, boys, not that one, the next one. So they go to the one that's not even on fire. They go and raid that, so you can just imagine. That's
I just love in here, like, the costumes just get so much better here because like they're riding on top of these convertible fire trucks, basically, no roof on them, and Bill the Butcher's got this like 10-foot high hat on and this big cloak, and oh my god, it's just outlandish, but it's so cool.
Yeah, like they have clothing, everything's just ready. Well, and that's the thing is like that's why like in those times a lot of things did catch on fire. Like I think the whole city almost burnt down once or twice because and then you could think about the ventilation because a lot of these homes, like a lot of the brick ones had windows, but a lot of the ones that weren't brick, they didn't have like any windows. So you can imagine like just the ventilation there.
Yeah.
You would have been a goner.
Yep.
And
right away.
You got 15 stain in one little, 2x2, just this little,
it's poor living.
Yeah. It was awful there, but those were the times.
Yep.
And then obviously Johnny's kind of introducing him to the gang, and then Amsterdam, as you see, Amsterdam gets kind of reacquainted with some of his dad's old affiliates. Like Happy Jack comes to settle his tribute, and you see like, okay, well, Happy Jack's a police, but as we find out in the film, the police are just as corrupt as everyone else is. And actually, police in those days were really only there to watch out for fires or keep the rich from the poor. So they didn't give a shit about really anybody. And then Happy Jack settles with them, and then they go and settle with Bill the Butcher, which is a great scene. Because you can see Johnny's nervous, and then Bill kind of sees this Amsterdam, and he's like, and he tells him the next time you come back, you bring something.
Yeah, because you have to pay for my my company.
Yeah,
he says.
Great scene, and it goes to that ship at night. He kind of tells Johnny. Bill tells him to go rob a Portuguese ship that has not been under quarantine, and they go there early in the morning to rob it. They find the ship has already been raided. And they encounter a night watchman still alive after being stabbed, who falls over to his death. So they could have left with nothing, but Amsterdam gets the idea to take this fresh dead body with them and sell it to the medical students to use it for research. Which is kind of funny, where he throws him in a boat.
He just chucks him over and he lands on the little dinghy there.
Yeah, but it turns out it was a smart play, because they end up making a headline on the front page in the Police Gazette as the Ghoul Gang Slaughterers, which impresses Bill, because they could have came away with nothing but salvage the situation. And this was something that was actually done at the time, because there was a price and a need to work and study on human bodies at the 19th century. It was in full gear. And then we get that cool scene between McGloin versus Amsterdam. I can't remember the insult that he called Amsterdam, because he calls him something, he didn't understand it. And he's like, well, if I knew what that was, I'd be inclined to be insulted. And then he tells him, and then they have some business. And he puts a beating on the little Irish prick, which in turn impresses Bill even more. And then at this point in the movie, they start to talk more and more about the draft, and how if you have $300, you can buy your way out of the draft. The movie sets the tension up, and it does obviously throughout the movie boil over, but they keep ramping it up. And you see recruiters walking the streets, and we see Amsterdam receiving a letter to sign up, but of course throws it away. Yeah. Jenny and Amsterdam have an encounter on the street, and he's like, "Don't you walk into me." Of course she does, and she swipes his medallion.
She's very good.
Yeah, she's very good. Well, apparently for the movie, she spent time working with the real pickpocketer to kind of show her that, and, like, how to do that, because she's does quite well. Especially when you see, like, he's like, okay, don't you run into me, and she just boom bangs into him, and like I couldn't see what she grabbed. Like,
neither could I. And right away you can see he's checking his pockets right away, like patting himself down.
Yeah. Yeah, and then she takes off, and then he realizes no, she took it, and he follows her to Upper Town on a horse-drawn omnibus.
Yeah.
Those are pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And she's dressed up really nice, and we see her pull this routine on this unsuspecting Gump simp, this guy, and you see, like, she has those fake arms, and then her hand.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, that was cool. And she has an armful of jewelry, and then she stops at a mansion, and she changes into a maid's outfit. So the Leo character, he kind of mentions, well, she's not just a bludget. I guess bludgets back then were called pickpockets, were girl pickpockets, so it's a bludget. Mm. It almost sounds like Harry Potter, like Mudblood, or
it does sound like that.
That. But and he also referred to her as a turtle dove, a woman who dresses like a maid and robs wealthy homes. And like he said, it takes a lot of sand to be a turtle dove.
Yeah.
And then her and Amsterdam have this weird kind of intense altercation, and there's some big time sexual tension between the two, and I like it.
Oh yeah.
We see them, yeah.
It sets it up.
Yeah. Yeah, you can tell that this is gonna get pretty carnal. And then we see some slum tourism in the movie. Mulrooney is escorting the upper class family through the 5 Points. I guess apparently this was something that was common, where the rich people there, they would come down to see it. I don't know, because I think even Charles Dickens, when he wrote about it, he frequent or did at least visited the 5 Points.
Yeah, well, this was their entertainment, right? Like, for live entertainment, that's probably why they would go down there.
Like we said earlier about what the police were more concerned about keeping the poor from them. And as he kind of, we see when he puts his medallion, his watch on there.
Yeah, that's right.
And like how that girl's like, is he dead? She's like, oh, he's dead like Tuesday morning. And they meet Bill the Butcher. And of course, that young girl kind of flirts with him. And Bill, as we see at this point in the movie, Bill's starting to really mentor Amsterdam. He's learning the ropes. We get a montage seeing his rise through the ranks. And we see him how he even shows him how to stab and attack through a pig at Butcher's shop, which is real cool.
Yeah, which pays off later, which is very nice.
Well, apparently, of course, Daniel Day-Lewis, because he's such a method actor, he went and worked at a slaughterhouse, and I think even like when they weren't shooting or on lunch breaks, he'd always carry his knives around and doing knives tricks.
Nice.
Yeah,
Right
so
on.
he took it.
He takes his craft very serious. I appreciate it.
Well, apparently, John C. Reilly said that he was so much in character that when the weather got cold and he even got sick, he refused to wear like warm, wet, like modern stuff. He wanted to wear like what they wore at the time, and he didn't want to take antibodies. But I think he got really sick. We were like, well, you got to because
good for him. But you got to look after yourself. You want to keep acting.
Yeah. And then, of course, Boss Tweed starts, he's complaining about the crime and the 5 points all the time. So they got to look like they're doing something. Like, it's like, we got to look like we care. Mm-hmm. And so they come up with this idea of like, well, a hanging, eh? And Bill asks him like, well, how many do you want to hang? And I just like how nonchalant he's like, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And then Bill's like, well, is it 3 or is it 4? Let's do 4. So we see these 4 sad sacks.
4 guys.
Yeah. And they are greeted before they're hanging by Bill the Butcher and co. I looked it up. There wasn't at the time in New York door public executions like this. There was executions like they would do it at their tombs, but they wouldn't do like like big
in a square
like that. Like they no longer did that because I was kind of curious. I'm like, really that far? But no, they didn't really do that. But it's a great effect.
It is.
There's that one guy that looks like he has kind of like the cataract there, and he like Bill offers him like a nickel for his watch. But I was like, what good is that to him? He's going to die here right away.
Yep.
So we get to see them go to the mission dance. There's that big mission dance in the old brewery. So after a good old hanging, it's time for a good old dance.
That's right.
Did you notice that on the street, that street barrel or that tank street cleaner on a wagon in the street, it says anti-pestilence cholera thwarting solution? So they're squirting, to disinfect the streets. But I just thought that was pretty funny. I don't know.
Yeah, I imagine the streets were pretty bad, like filth.
Well, you see in the movie, like there's I don't know if those are real horse shit or that those were like prop horse shit, because like if you really pay attention, there's like all kinds of shit all over the road.
Yeah,
which is good because like a lot of movies kind of don't. If you watch period pieces, they kind of neglect.
Yeah, the streets are usually clean, right?
Or this, it was just like it was like a Wild West. They
did a great job.
And at the mission dance, Jenny gets to choose her knight in shiny armor, and we see these even like men dressed up as women, and where the one guy didn't shave that close.
Yeah.
And I like actually how this dance takes off. You see a lot of dudes dancing with these dudes dressed up. I don't know if you noticed, or I definitely noticed that it looked kind of dangerous while they were dancing, holding those freaking candles.
That's right.
Yeah, like they're waltzing in this old brewery on these balconies, like not the safest setup. No. But I don't think they worried about that kind of shit. Talk about fired hastard.
I don't think safety was ever thought of during that time, just with anybody.
They definitely had no occupational safety officers.
No, that wasn't invented probably until like 80 years later.
We'll just get a bucket of water. What's the worst that could happen? The city just blows up.
That's right.
Amsterdam and Jenny kind of hook up, eh? Of course, poor Johnny, he has his little musical box thinking this is the time, but Jenny wants a little bit of Amsterdam.
Mm-hmm. She likes the bad boy.
Of course, eh? Well, I mean, after that encounter when she had her little knife in his throat, she even pierced him, and it didn't deter him. So, you can imagine girls at that time, like they're bad girls themselves.
Yes, they were.
So you need someone to up, eh? And he discovers there when they're hooking up behind the hay bales that she has a history of Bill. I take it, and this is where I'm not clear, and maybe you did, that they hooked up and that baby was Bill's that they took out, or was she pregnant before and that because she's scarred he doesn't fancy? Because I always found this part, when I watched it, I'm like, did Bill and her hook up and that baby was his that died, or was it that he never hooked up with her, but when she had a baby and now scarred, he doesn't fancy that? I still am a little unclear of that. I always like, if someone out there, an expert in this, could you maybe clarify this?
My interpretation of that scene was that she became pregnant by someone else. My impression was that Bill helped cut it out.
Yes, I had that my first impression, but then later in the film, she's like, Bill never touched me until I asked him to. Now, is that after when she was scarred up and they took the baby out, or was it that he did and that baby was his, and then the baby died and they took it out and he lost interest?
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm still trying to decide. Like, I don't even know if they were really involved sexually because she was so young when he started looking after her, like his daughter, I feel like. So I don't know if they were ever, if he ever diddled at all, but I just think that he cared for her so much like his daughter, so that, and she cares for him too like a father figure, so they kind of look after each other.
Well, she was his original apprentice, and also, as we see in the movie, Amsterdam becomes somewhat of a son to him.
Right.
So it's not a far stretch to think that he saw her in a different light where he didn't fancy her like that, because obviously Bill, well, actually, from what I see, Bill likes his exotic women because he's hanging out at those Asian brothels.
Yeah.
So
so I never took it that they were sexually involved ever. That's not my interpretation.
But I don't know why now. I just started I'm like, were they now? Does it suggest that?
It's kind of
it's a little murky.
It's kind of iffy. It's a little blurry.
Yeah. But anyways, on to bigger things. A really good scene is that boxing match scene where what is it? How many rounds did that fight have? Like 75?
Oh my god, it was so many. How are those guys even standing?
So we see in this scene that the police break up the betting fights as it was illegal to have boxing matches in bars. To get around that, as we see in the movie, they would go to many islands in the New York harbor. It looked like it was a dock or something.
It was like a floating dock, yeah.
There in the 5 points at first, it gets raided by the police. Bill asks, like, okay, why are we getting raided here? Didn't we pay them off? But Tweed is like, well, we paid off the municipal police and it was the Metropolitan that raided them. So Amsterdam comes with the idea for them to hold the remainder of the fight on the sail barge outside the city limits. Apparently, it wasn't entirely like that for a long period of time with the two opposing police, because eventually it did come centralized. But it was kind of interesting, some of the backstories when you had the two police forces, they would arrest other people and then other police would release them. So it was like a back and forth. They're like, you did this person, we're going to take them. So they played almost capture the flag.
Yeah.
With these guys.
That's funny.
There is also a great scene where we see immigrants just landing on the dock and are they're on the dock. They're citizens and then they join the army. The better scene is the theater scene of Uncle Tom's Cabin production. We see Abraham Lincoln floating up in space.
Oh, yeah.
There's an assassination attempt on Bill the Butcher, and Leo spots it and he saves him because, well,
Amsterdam, whatever. Yeah, Leo, Amsterdam, one of the same. Sorry.
After this Amsterdam has cemented. Listen, I'm going to go between Amsterdam and Leo in this. It's the same person playing.
It's cool. It's cool.
So this is a real important scene because this cements him as Bill's most trusted confidant. And then after all that, they're hanging out in the brothel, and we see this gentleman tap dancing. And apparently, tap dancing originated in the 5 points. Nice. It's like a mixture of Irish dancing with African dancing.
That makes sense.
What is interesting here is Bill's he makes a lot of racist and derogatory references. And up to this point in the movie, it is pretty conflicting in the feeling towards Bill. He's really likable. And you can see as the viewer how Amsterdam is having these conflicting feelings. But then you get a reminder here what a piece of shit Bill is.
Yeah, no, his character has got a great arc, and while watching it, I'm like, man, I love this guy, but then I hate this guy because he's bad. Like it's hard you don't know what to feel about Bill the Butcher.
And then they're all kind of just wasted and passed out, and
lots of naked ladies around.
Lots of ladies of the brothel establishment everywhere. Even Boss Tweed comes and makes an appearance, and so he ends up settling with that French lady that might have a little itchy and scratchy, so they suggest.
Oh, that's right. That was funny.
Kind of funny. It didn't deter him. He went. Oh no!
He went in.
Yeah, he went in anyways. So Jenny comes and she's kind of cleaning up after Bill because he's injured, and Amsterdam he sees that and he kind of just gets kind of really pissed off, and he makes a toast, and then he takes off, and then Jenny takes off, and he goes after her. And of course Johnny, and the thing is, I don't know why Johnny, he's got all these girls around him, like he's looking like he's doing not too bad, but
he's fine.
you know, he needs that Everdeen enchantress. So, and her and him, they just have it all out. They're slapping each other, and boom, they're almost biting, and it's a good scene, and then they go for it.
Try it and I'll bite you.
If you were gonna bite me, I don't think you'd warn me, huh?
Find out.
Yeah, no, it was great. They wore each other out.
And then old Peeping Tom, Uncle Bill there is just sitting there watching them sleep.
Yeah, this
with
is
the American flag.
This is a really good scene too,
scene.
actually, because I don't think he realizes Jenny's in the bed with him. And so he's talking to Amsterdam, and he's basically having a heart-to-heart with the guy. Mm-hmm. And Amsterdam's just like, oh, and he kind of like slowly moves the sheet over Jenny. She's facing away, so he knows it's a girl, but he doesn't know it's Jenny, I think. And he's just doing this heart-to-heart, and you can tell Jenny is probably listening because she's probably awake here.
Yeah, she does. She does overhear that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great.
It's a great scene because like it connects his father to him, and like. And it must have made him even more conflicting because you see how high in regard Bill holds Priest. Like he tells him that like he gave me the beating of the life, and he gave me such a good beating that I couldn't look. I was scared. So it's just like if I could, I'd fight him if I was blind, but I needed one eye. I just thought that was just a fantastic.
Another thing that kind of caught me is when Butcher talks about being 47 years old and not understanding how he survived that long. So, and I wonder if that's what most men in that era maybe thought, that 47 was really, really old, and that, you know what I mean? Because like you either died from being killed or just disease and, medicine, starvation. Like, so like, that's pretty crazy that, 150 years ago, probably a lot of men and women were dying at such a young age.
Well, yeah, like 47 now with the life expectancy is kind of like baby shit. Yeah. Where there, probably like 47 would be kind of like a monumental age. Yeah. And in the way they lived and like how he went about it, like he says, how I lasted this long is through fear. Mm-hmm. And it kind of makes sense. Like really good. And that fake eye looks so real.
It's and they focus in on it a few times. They really make you, because that eye just for whatever reason intimidates the shit out of you.
And they do such a good job because, like, obviously we know that Amsterdam, he's seeking revenge and from what Bill did to him, but you also kind of you see when it's revealed to him who Amsterdam really is, like how heartbreaking that probably was for Bill in his own kind of twisted way. And we see this because that kind of takes us to the Butcher's apprentice and the celebration of Bill the Butcher's victory over Amsterdam's father. They're at I think the Chinese Opera House. I can't remember the name of that place in the movie. It's a cool scene, but during I think the 1860s, apparently New York did not have Chinese population really at all. So this depiction in the movie is a little bit, if you're a purist and you like accurate history, the Chinese population wasn't that big back then.
Right
there in New York. On the evening of the anniversary, Johnny, in a fit of jealousy over Jenny's affections for Amsterdam, I think it's a little bit more than just affections, reveals Amsterdam's true identity and intentions to Bill. It's a cool, intense scene because you don't know what Bill's really thinking at that moment.
Right.
And it's really unsettling. And especially when he calls up Jenny and he's just throwing the knives, and like he's almost hitting her. Like I think he even kind of cuts her on the neck a little bit.
Yeah, and she's thinking something's up because she did used to be his apprentice, and she's done this before. And well, they make it seem like she's done this before with him in the act, and that everything was probably okay. But then when she realizes how he's throwing the knives and how close he's getting, she's probably like, what the fuck is going on?
And I think we should also kind of set up the fact that at this moment, the celebration is like throughout the movie, especially with the Chinese characters in this movie that appear throughout the movie, because obviously they hate the natives just as much as the Irish. Amsterdam kind of says that you can't just kill Bill anytime. He has to make it public and in a special occasion, just like how Bill killed his father. because as you see in the opening prologue, he kills his brother, not his brother, his father. The whole the fight is done.
That's right.
He killed the head, and so this is what Leo has to do. But obviously, Bill baits Amsterdam with the knife throwing act involving Jenny, and it gets really close to hitting her, like I said. And he's mad at Amsterdam, but he's also mad at Jenny because she is with him, but she also is with Bill. As Bill toasts Priest Valen, Amsterdam throws his knife, but Bill deflects it and wounds Amsterdam with a counter throw. Bill then beats him up and burns his cheek with a hot blade.
Well, at first he throws a knife at him, right? And it gets him
In the guts.
and he says that's a wound, and that's one of the callbacks to the pig teaching moment where
He's teaching him.
Yeah, he's teaching him. He's like, hey, this is a kill shot, this is a wound, that's a wound, this is a kill shot, whatever. And so when he throws a knife at him, he's like, that's a wound. So right away you know that like he's okay, he's not gonna die. He just wounded him. And
And I like how he's like on the table and he's talking smack to Leo, and Leo spits blood into him, and he just loses his shit, and he just starts headbutting him, and he's calling out to the crowd, and they're like calling for like body parts in numerous ways to kill Amsterdam, like, you know, tell Bill, and like, you know, they're like, cut, you know, like, yeah, and Bill proclaims, though he's not even worth a death at his hands, because in Bill's mind, that for him just to kill somebody, because he hasn't, like he told him earlier, he hasn't killed anyone worthy to remember like his father.
Yeah.
And that's like the greatest insult to Amsterdam, who's the priest's father, that he's like saying, you're not your father. You're not even worth me to kill you. Like, I think that's one of the greatest insults, to let him live in shame. He messes up his face because he kind of says, we're going to make you hideous. But throughout the movie, it's just like a little gash. You know,
Yeah.
pretty boy, you know, Amsterdam.
yeah,
You don't-
I wished it would have been a little more distinct.
They should have made it more pronounced.
Yeah, it should have. Because, you know, they show that scene like when he's coming out into public and the camera is going through the skinny alleyways and people are turning around looking back at him, making it look like that you're Amsterdam and you're being stared at because of the burn mark on his cheek. But really, the burn mark wasn't that bad.
No.
You know what I mean?
In some cases, if you look at some of the scenes to continuity, you don't even see that burn mark. And sometimes the burn mark is on a different side of the face. Well, just like Liam Neeson's when you see him, he with the blade cuts his cheek, and then when you see him next, it's on the opposite side.
Can't they do a little research there?
Yeah, of course, us experts, hey?
Yeah,
But,
we're experts.
But you notice these things after repeated viewing.
You do.
Yeah.
You do. Yeah. But we'll let him go because it's fine.
In shame, Jenny takes him into some type of underground catacomb grave site, which I don't think those existed back then.
Probably not.
But it's a cool effect. You see all these skulls, and that looks like it was kind of like a place of refuge for Jenny.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, her mom, I think that's her mom's burial site, because I think she when she digs up some shit like her money and all that, and she's imploring him to go to San Francisco.
That's right.
I like where she takes the map and she's talking about their safe voyage.
Yeah. All the way around.
Past South America.
Yeah. Safe voyage.
Like, how long would that take? Like, that's got to take like
Long
months.
time. Months. Yeah, for sure.
Months
By boat.
for them to get to San Francisco.
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Good luck.
He returns to the 5 Points seeking vengeance and announces the return by hanging the dead rabbit in Paradise Square. And so at this point in the movie, Amsterdam becomes a rival to Bill and the nativists, as he did like his father. In retaliation, Bill sends a corrupt Irish policeman Maroney to investigate, but Amsterdam kills him and hangs his body in the square as well. Oh, I didn't mean to shoot you. You just started me, that's all. Oh, I love that scene. Oh, you remember it? But up until that, when Bill, I like the scene where Bill's talking to Mulrooney and he's telling him, you know, because he has that dead rabbit, so he's telling him how dare he defile that, and he's like, is that uneasy with you? You know, oh, it's not easy on me. You know, I wouldn't say that, but I have my allegiance is to the law. Yeah, it's like, what are you talking about? Just no, you go do this.
Yeah.
You work for me. I always remember that scene. I always thought that was good. But in retaliation, Bill has Johnny beaten and run through with a pike and leaving him on time Paradise Square too. So that leads to Amsterdam having to put him out of his misery.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a real sad scene, because just before that he, revealed that he sold him out.
Yep.
and then he banishes him, but of course it's the 5 points. And I think that scene, you're like, well, why would Johnny walk through there? When you start hearing about the 5 points, why so many people join gangs is that when you walk down the wrong street or the wrong alley, people would either shank you or rob you. So you always, that's part of the point why we had all these gangs, is for protection.
Yeah.
It was a different time. And then Amsterdam's gang beats up that McGloin, who one of his, the little Irish lieutenant, and he's like visiting the church. He sees what's that guy, Jimmy, and he starts calling him Ninja.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
then,
there's a ninja in the church.
There's a ninja in the church, and then he even implores to the one-handed priest, and he knocks him out. We don't need a racist piece of shit like that in there. You know, like, come on. I like Jimmy.
Yeah. I have a quote that's from that scene, I think, but I can't remember who says it. And it's the quote that I remember is "meat-headed shit shack." Do you remember that line? No. I'm trying to remember. I should have wrote down more, but I thought that was a funny quote from someone in the church. I know it was a church scene. But anyways, maybe it was when he was talking to that guy when he strangled him, that old member of the Dead Rabbits. Was it the bald guy that came in there?
McGloin.
Yeah, and he strangles him in the church, and as he's strangling him, the curtains are coming down, and you see this thing.
No, that's Happy Jack.
Is it Happy Jack? Sorry, I was okay.
Yeah, you got those a little bit confused, but they're both, yeah. Because
So I think it was that guy that was calling Amsterdam a meat-headed shit shack. I think that's why.
Yeah,
it's possible. To that. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I think so, because he fired at him and he missed him, and I think under his breath he's like, "You meat-headed shit shack."
Yeah, I think so, but I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah.
But I thought it was cool as he's killing him. You see, it reveals the stained glass, like the Jesus hanging across. Yeah, that was kind of interesting.
I think that was there for a reason.
Exactly,
symbolizing, right? Yeah,
yeah.
Well, that's part of the reason why Bill kind of states in there. Another reason why he doesn't like the Irish or give a shit about their votes is because he's like, they vote who their Pope tells them to vote for, right?
Pretty much.
So that's another reason. So he's like, well, what use are them? And they don't even vote. So we can't even use their votes because they're going to vote what the church down in frickin' Rome does. At this point, Amsterdam uses that there is more than 15,000 Irish immigrants making their way to New York City every week. If they could organize, he's saying they could be an army. The incident garners newspaper coverage, and Amsterdam presents Tweed with a plan to defeat Bill's influence. Tweed will back the candidacy of Monk McGinn for the sheriff, and Amsterdam will secure the Irish vote for him. Because at this point, Tammany's had enough of Bill. Yeah. He sees Bill he has a different ideology, and it's not going where Tammany Hall wants, so he's looking to make a new friend, and that's with pretty boy Amsterdam. And it's a funny montage for the candidacy for Monk, especially when they're getting people to vote. You see them cutting their hair, beards, mustaches, changing their clothes to go back. A couple of them are like, well, you got to get back out there. It's like, I voted like 3 times, and you're talking about doing your civic duty. Yeah. Like, you imagine? Well, they got.
Well, I think it's similar to how we vote today. Yeah,
I guess so. Well, Monk wins in a landslide, and he ends up getting more votes than there is voter.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, and because boss tweets like, "Oh, we'll find a way. We'll find a way to undercut that." And then, of course, things take a dark turn. Just as things are looking good for Monk, humiliated Bill confronts Monk while having a shave and murders him.
That's right. He does.
I wish I didn't understand. Knowing Bill's history and what he does, what he represents, Monk would think that's a good idea to turn his back on Bill.
That was a stupidity moment for Monk, for sure. Like, he's like, "Oh, come in, we'll discuss this the democratic way," and he turns his back on him and you got a fucking knife in the back.
Like, I don't know if he had, because he's an elected official now, that he thought that he was a little bit untouchable, that Bill would not dare. But I just don't think history kind of shows that Bill doesn't care. That's the point. So for him to turn his back, but it was a cool.
It was a great scene.
It's a great scene.
This is what it's a pretty well known scene, I think, amongst out there in YouTube. I've seen it a lot. And then when Bill comes up and grabs his club and carves another notch in it, and then fucking says, "See this? This is you, notch number whatever it is," and he ends
up Irish, like, what do you call him, mutt or something
like that, and then he basically beats him with his own club and kills him. Such a brutal scene.
It is a brutal scene. And a character that I really enjoyed in the film, had a real sticky end, but that's Scorsese film.
But hey, I mean, a great character deserves a great ending, and that was a great ending.
That is very true. So Monk's death prompts an angry Amsterdam to challenge Bill to a gang battle in Paradise Square. which Bill accepts. I just kind of like when they're walking there, the funeral procession, and of course Bill and his natives are all kind of at their shack there, and you see that McGloin. I hated that McGloin, that smirking and laughing, like these are his people. And so it's a rematch time.
Yep.
But of course, the Civil War draft riots break out just as the gangs are preparing to fight, and the Union Army soldiers are deployed to control the rioters. The poor have had enough, and firefighters are crashing in the buildings. It's just freaking chaos. And again, the montage where they're having like these the telegraphs going out, and they're saying all these streets. Like the thing is, you and I don't live obviously in the States, or I don't know New York, so these streets that they're talking about, I have no idea what they really mean. I'm like, okay, well, where's that?
Yeah, I wonder if, though, the streets that they're yelling out in the movie are actual, like, I would assume that he would probably use real street names, hey?
Well, in the beginning of the movie, I believe Bill, he kind of lists on his finger when he Mulberry, he lists all like, these are streets on the 5 points, but I think also because we're seeing in this scene, the upper class are being raided, because we saw that one family that came down to the points. Yeah. We kind of see them talking about what was going to happen, and the one guy is like prophesizing, this is going to go bad, and the other guy's, it's going to be like a dark night, because they were going to say, if everyone wants to riot, everyone hold a candle in their windows, and you just see all these candles. Yeah, so apparently that was just crazy. Like, this stuff was crazy.
What I liked about before they get into their final gang battle is they actually sat down and had a discussion, and they actually sat down and said, okay, what are the parameters of this fight? They're like, okay, knives, hatchets, guns, no guns. Good boy, he says. Yeah. Good boy. Like, I love that. They they had a great conversation about what they were going to do and use for this gang fight before they actually fought. Like, that was so cool. Yeah,
like, they're, in a weird way, there's a certain system of honor.
Honor, yes.
And you still see the respect that Bill has for Amsterdam.
He does.
Yeah, so it's great. So as the rival gangs fight, cannon fire from the ships is directed into Paradise Square, interrupting their battle shortly before it begins. Many of the gang members are killed by the naval gunfire, soldiers, and riders, and we just see this. Like, it becomes basically every person for themselves. It's like the Royal Rumble.
It is now time for the Royal Rumble!
WWF style.
Yeah.
Bill and Amsterdam face off against one another until Bill gets wounded by a piece of shrapnel.
From the bombs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But up until when the bombs go off, they're all in this cloud of dust. And everybody's just all over the place. And I like, it really sets up, it's quiet. It's almost like he can't hear. You just hear him breathing. And he's searching for Bill. And Bill just comes out of nowhere and starts kind of carving him up.
Yeah, it is. I love that. It is so, because I think his ears are ringing from the blast. Yeah. Like you said, he can't hear shit, and it's so cloudy and foggy. Yeah. And Bill's just kind of sneaking in and out of the scene and cutting him up little bits at a time. And it was so crazy.
It's really crazy. And then he does get a shot on Bill, but then everything blows up and they all go flying, and like rocks and all kinds of infrastructure is falling around them. And we get to where they kind of, Amsterdam comes into two, and we see Bill's there, and then he's wounded.
Yeah.
And he has that piece of shrapnel in him. Yeah, he's like, I die a true American. But Amsterdam stabs him, and
it's an intimate death scene.
Because really
it's just between them two, and he just gives him that one final stab, and kind of just ends him right there. But it's a very intimate and closeness between them, because they were friends. There was a father-son relationship there, but he's having to kill him because he needs to. And it's a beautiful scene.
It's a very beautiful scene. And I think it's like a little bit of that scene was set up as a misdirect, because like the beginning of the movie, we see this big detailed battle, and you're kind of, as a viewer, you're kind of expecting, they're going to have a similar one where Amsterdam will come on there. But actually their little skirmish in comparison to what was really going on with the riots and the draft was really insignificant to compare the bigger war out there.
That's right.
And they just got caught in between. Because like you even see that when there's that elephant running in the street just before they're ready to crash there, because already things are offset. So it's a really good scene between Amsterdam and Bill.
Yeah.
And then they bury Bill in a cemetery in Brooklyn next to his father. And as really basically the homage that the movie ends. Like you see all these dead people and all.
Yeah,
these
they're all
coffins,
lined up.
so they're all lined up.
But all the buildings are burning.
Burning.
But I did notice, though, during this death row scene, I did notice that the special effects were a little bit...
That matte painting looked a little too Dick Tracy noticeable.
Yeah, but like even just
dodgy.
with some of the buildings looked like the fire was real, but then I'd noticed there was a couple of buildings that the fire didn't quite look real. It looked faked. It looked like it was only in the windows. It was weird. I don't know. It just looked very low budget, but that's fine. It was just it was like one building that kind of stuck out for me.
Yeah, I wonder if like there was a little bit of a pyro in there, but they enhanced it with CGI. And then just maybe the technology just wasn't there yet.
Yeah, it's fine.
Because this is 2002, so like not really till that time is when they actually got better at making like water and storms. Because I think that movie, The Perfect Storm, was actually a signaling where George Lucas had attacked. Of course, I got to do a Star Wars reference.
Of course,
George Lucas in Attack of the Clones on Camino. Up until that point, water and depicting in CGI is really hard.
It is very hard.
And so, I think they're still at the precipice of really like look at today. Like look how good the CGI can be.
I fully expect James Cameron to do a good job with Avatar because he's gonna pull it out.
With we got the 3D, it's going to be unreal. Like I'm really more and more getting excited for that film.
Me too.
I know there's a lot of Dick Tracy's.
Yeah,
a lot of Dick Tracy's towards James Cameron and Avatar, but I mean, I don't know. I don't like to bet against the king of the world. Okay, back to Gangs of New York. We're not talking about Avatar. We're talking about Gangs of New York.
That's right.
And so the scene you kind of see, it's another. There's so many montages here where at the grave and we see time kind of pass and you see like the next century, you see the Brooklyn Bridge. And I like the fact that they have the World Trade Centers in there.
The Twin Towers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was another just because you know that at that point they're not gone because it was filmed before, but that's pretty crazy to see those two towers standing there in New York. All right, Raz, it's time for Did You Know?
Oh, you're such a cheeky little bastard.
My Irish is really bad.
Well, mine's bad too.
Okay, let's get with Did You Know? Raz, did you know this film took 25 years to come to the big screen?
Yes, and actually, to piggyback on that, it took 32 years. It was 32 years in the making.
Oh.
As Martin Scorsese read Herbert Asbury's Asperger's 1928 novel, he didn't have any money or clout yet then, so he waited. He bought the movie rights to the book in 1979. Turk, did you know the book that inspired this movie wasn't all that accurate?
I did not know that.
A modern historian, Taylor Annenbinder, who wrote the 5 Points, a 19th century New York City neighborhood that invented tap dance, stolen elections, and became the world's most notorious slum, and gave Scorsese input on the gang screenplay, said Asbury's book from the 20s exaggerated how dangerous the neighborhood was. Annenbinder had access to statistics that Asbury did not, and he said, other than public drunkenness and prostitution, there was no more crime in the 5 Points than any other part of the city. And that happens, right?
Yeah.
Like at the time, like this is the 1920s.
Exactly. Raz, did you know that Leonardo DiCaprio accidentally broke Daniel Day-Lewis's nose while filming a fight scene? Day-Lewis continued to film the scene despite the injury.
No, I didn't. Did you know, Turk, that Scorsese imagined the Blues Brothers as the leads? This is obviously back in the 70s when he acquired the rights. He envisioned Dan Aykroyd playing Amsterdam and John Belushi in playing Bill the Butcher.
Oh my god.
Oh, and also William Dafoe and Robert De Niro were also attached to play Bill the Butcher at different times.
Wait, yeah, it's so crazy. Like when you think about casting and then you go back and you go in hindsight, could you cast these people? Knowing what you know now, it's like it's so hard to go back and go, no way you could cast those people because we've never seen it, right? Crazy.
Turk, did you know George Lucas helped with an elephant prop? You know that scene where we see that elephant running down the street there? Scorsese wanted to use a real elephant, but couldn't make it work, so George was like, we'll just come in here and we'll CGI it.
Really? That's awesome.
And so they just shot the scene and then they put it in.
Oh, it looked pretty good actually.
It did, because like if you didn't think about it, because it doesn't call really a lot of attention upon it.
It's a background thing.
And that's some of the best CGI. That's like, to some effects people, that's the greatest compliment when they don't know.
That's right.
Did you know several of the characters were based on real people? Bill the Butcher was real, though Scorsese changed his name from Pool to Cutting.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense, Cutting.
He's a butcher.
Because I think they took amalgamation of characters. A lot of times in these films, they'll take, to make one character, they'll take a character here or there
Yeah.
and kind of add it to it. And actually, that the real Bill Poole, he actually was murdered in 1855, as this movie takes place by the time Bill, the movie, dies, 1863. And also, William Boss Tweed was a real politician who controlled the Tammany Hall political machine, as you may recall from, well, I guess we didn't go to the States, but I think a lot of Americans in high school, they probably talked about this, and he was probably viewed as the most corrupt politician in American history. But he did a lot of good for the city too. Like, you know, a lot of those buildings. There's some buildings I don't know the names and stuff. I don't know the history. Again, we're not experts on this, so
that's right.
Some of this we pieced together before we made this podcast. Some of this information, but I would like to read that Herbert Asbury's book of the Gangs of New York. I think one day I'd like to read that. I definitely want to dive into more of the real history. Oh, and did you know that Scorsese had a cameo as an upper class person in that scene when Jenny Everdeen is rating it as a date? Scorsese's at the head of the table.
Oh shit! Now I gotta go back and see that.
Yeah, and the little baby in there, I think that's his daughter.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And some more info. Probably a lot of people know this, but Daniel Day-Lewis, to get himself into Bill the Butcher, he listened to a lot of Eminem's music on set.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And obviously, like I said earlier, he worked as a butcher.
But for those of us what lived and died in them furious days, it was like everything we knew was mightily swept away. And no matter what they did to build this city up again, for the rest of time, it would be like no one even knew he was ever here.
On that note, guys, Gangs of New York, both our opinion. This is a must-see movie. If you're a fan of Martin Scorsese and you haven't went and saw it, you should get out and see it. It's got great performances, like we said, with Daniel Day-Lewis. It's a fun time. Like, I know there's some serious stuff in there, but I had a lot of fun. I think Scorsese, he can take bad characters and make you enjoy them and almost like them, and then he'll take it away. But I found this movie was fun. It's epic. Like, I think a lot of movies, they're making big epic shows like The Lord of the Shit and She-Crap, and they got nothing.
Yeah.
Like, epic movie, I don't know. There's rare that I've watched a really epic movie outside of Lord of the Rings or movies like this. Movies like this, I'd love to see more. I know you mentioned The Northman, but anyways, Gangs of New York is just it's an awesome watch. It's just, I love the movie, and I think the more I watch it, the more I appreciate it.
Yep, I do too. I can definitely continue to rewatch this for years to come.
That has been our Retro Roundtable with Gangs of New York.
All right, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Turk and Raz podcast. We appreciate all your support. You can catch us wherever you get your podcasts, such as Google, Spotify, Podbean, Audible, and Amazon. You can also follow us on Twitter at Turk Raz. You can also find us on channels such as Odyssey and Rumble. We would love to hear your feedback. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Smash the like and subscribe to the channels. Also ring the bells for notification and share our videos and podcasts out there. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.